Streaming, just so you know. So we don't pick up. I will call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock if I can have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think at the top of our list is the library first thing. Heather, how would you like to come?
Here?
Sure, why not?
Thank you. Hello. Hi.
Library budget's actually very flat this year. The only big decrease is in operating expenses, and books are up slightly, $900. I guess, Heather, if you want to elaborate on the decrease and the slight increase in books.
Sure, the decrease, I was just consolidating things. We got rid of typewriter contracts, water, just things that we just aren't using. So I was able to shift it around. There are a few increases in the operations that are like fixed amounts from Bibliomation. But there's also a lot of decreases at the same time, so it pretty much evened out in the wash. The increase for the books, it's actually more of the newspapers, reference materials, magazines. We still have the same amount of them, but the price does increase. So,
We had typewriter contracts.
yes, we did. That was the first thing I wanted to get rid of.
I appreciate your attention to detail. It's difficult at my level to check on typewriter contracts. Anybody have any questions for Heather on the library?
Jeff, one question. Does your budget include, for the next year, include funding for the rent at the hotel? Or is that coming out of another pot?
That's reimbursable, John, from FEMA, so that's going to be coming out of the disaster, and then we're going to get reimbursed from FEMA.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
This is the first down budget we've seen. Budget request. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a tiny decrease,
Well,
but it's
it-
still a decrease.
it-
I was very happy.
It's the other side of the line, and it's the first one. Good job.
I'm thrifty.
Do you see what happens when we take the apartments out of town hall and move them to the library?
I just want to be clear that, I just want to make sure that Heather will, hopefully will tell you that, we're not cutting anything, services, there's no reduction, there's no, it's still the budget you're looking to do to run the library. So there's, but I do appreciate your attention to detail on that.
One other question. How's the Heritage working out for you?
It's very nice, thank you. We're very happy.
But she did say she missed us,
I do.
and then, which is awfully nice. She misses us in town hall too, so.
Yeah, I've gotten some positive feedback from some residents that were able to finally go and get some books out, and they were really happy.
Even though it's reduced and small and different, we're up 100% for all of our programs and services. Everything is available through the catalog.
Amazing.
It's a little more, I dare say, a little more personal than it is in a big library, which is, obviously we need the library, but it's kind of, I think it's a little more personal for a lot of the patrons coming in.
It's very cozy.
Yeah. We'll have to think about that. Maybe we'll spend some of that typewriter money on
Yeah.
remodeling some, make it a little more cozy over the other one, the new, at the library we get back in. Any other questions? Heather, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Well, that was easy. Next is the town clerk. Alice, how are you?
Good.
You're up slightly?
Just slightly, two small things. One is our storage, which goes up every year because we have more to store. Everything has to be microfiched and preserved and then sent to our off-site. Used to be Iron Mountain, now it's IQS. That goes up a little bit every year. And the other thing was, one of our notaries is expiring. So it's a new notary and a new notary book and a new stamp. And those were really our only increases. My budget is all paper and books.
Documents.
Yeah. You know, and
Records.
paper, despite the fact that it's gone up, we've done okay with our supplier.
There's no typewriter contracts?
No, we do use a typewriter, though. There are a few things we still have to use it for, but no. Our typewriter's hanging in there.
Any questions for Alice on the town clerk?
Unfortunately, again, I have one.
Sure.
I saw in the news today that the man down in DC is now looking to close Iron Mountain.
We don't use Iron Mountain anymore.
Oh, we
The
don't do
state
Iron
of-
Mountain
No,
anymore?
the state of Connecticut actually rescinded their contract.
Okay, thank
And
you.
we got our stuff. It took me almost 2 years to get our stuff out of there, though. I
Okay.
was very unhappy with them.
Okay, super, thank
Yeah.
you.
So our stuff is housed with our supplier, which is IQS.
Good,
We're in their vault.
thank you much.
Yeah, and actually, John, the new reporting through IQS is, it's like night and day from what we used to get from our
It
old
was
provider.
so amazing. When I finally got the documents back from Iron Mountain, it's very expensive to ship them. They refuse to ship them to IQS, so they ship them here. To ship them back out, it would have been cheaper for me to load up my truck, drive it, stay overnight, and drop them off. But IQS came here and picked them up. So they are amazing. Yeah.
Anybody else? Alice, thank you for the work you do down there with your people. And I will say that the public is very happy with the town clerk also.
Thank you.
You know, very good. Who do we have next?
Darcel.
Hello, Darcel.
Hello. Oh, it's Goodstown.
Oh. I won't take it personal.
Sorry.
So assessor's budget basically flat, slight increase, $50 in operating expenses, but ultimately really a flat budget. Information that came out, oh, sorry, Jason. go ahead.
Just one question. Darcel, on the operating line operating expenses, it shows a $50 change, but right now you're heading towards about we'll call it 12 grand to round up, expenditure, and in historicals seem to be less than that. Can you just walk me through the thought process of the request of the 16, or 16.5, I guess it was?
On our operating expenses, I don't, just, schooling is one thing that we have to keep up. We're still, my assistant assessor is still going through school, so she needs to still be, go through the process. I need continuing education as well, to keep up my, continuing education for that as well.
And
Our
ju-
grand list printing always goes up for the grand list books, and the mailings that we do send out, I think that's all it is just continuing of that.
And Jason, prior to Darcel being here and the assistant assessor, we had a level 2 and a level 1 assessor in the office, so the education requirements were already met. So that's why the education requirements for our assistant assessor has to keep going on the continuing education. So that's why you could see it went from 7. We're estimating this year it's going to be 11 based on the education, and then next year grow a little bit further because there'll be continuing education as well.
So the delta of the 4, or if we look at this current year we're in where we've budgeted the 16 again, and we're only going to track towards the 12, I guess my question, is twofold. What was the difference in the 4 grand for this year that we're going to save? And I'm cool with saving money, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Why are we
Some of
then-
that was in supplies as well.
Okay.
Just regular supplies, and we've we've definitely changed a lot from using paper to digitalizing everything. So a lot of things that were expended that way, we're changing just procedures in-house to make everything more efficient moving that forward, but some of that is just supply items that we're not using.
And that's perfect, but I imagine we would continue to see those savings.
Yeah, yes.
And printing the grand list went up this year slightly, and dues and memberships also. That's probably the bulk of from the 12 to the 16 for next year.
I get, and I'm dense, so it could be me. I guess I'm still having trouble understanding if we're not going to reach the 16 this year because of the cost savings you've implemented, why are we budgeting it again next year? And it's only $4,000. It's not going to end the world, but I'm just, new guy question, I guess.
Yeah,
I didn't
okay,
go,
sorry.
I think last year I didn't attend a full week of education. I spread it out, so there wasn't housing included in that, so I just went up for a day, and I did day trips or day schooling throughout the year and continuing education, so I don't, the hotel, unfortunately, when we have school, it's in June, it's always the first week in June, it's a week up at UConn, and you have to stay there, because you can't drive back and forth through the day. School is from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., and then tests on Friday.
Okay, so you took measures this year that are going to, in theory, save this $4,000.
Yes.
You may or may not be able to do those next year, so we're putting the $4,000 back in.
Yeah.
I'm cool, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Darcel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darcel.
Tax,
Tax, Azra.
Azra. I try to sit closest for moral support, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, should I sit here?
No, 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 I'm
sorry.
joking with you.
So this is Azra's first go-around, not first go-around with the budget, but first go-around coming and meeting the board. Her budget is up just under 2%. The majority of it is in overtime, and how overtime used to work is, we used to get a floater to cover the overtime from the first selectman's office. This year, we're gonna do it a little differently. You'll see as we talk about the finance department's budget, we're gonna have a floater that floats just between finance, tax and assessors. So the overtime will actually hit the tax department's line this year, so that's the estimated increase there. And then operating is up, as you can probably explain it better than I can, but we're gonna print out the delinquents more frequently next year.
Currently, we're sending out delinquency notices quarterly, and I find when we send them, people come and pay. So I wanted to change that to bi-monthly, every other month. And that's the difference in that's the big difference in the operating. It's about $3,000 a mail-in.
Okay, is that in the print and processing? Is that part of that?
Print, press, and mail, the
Perfect.
whole
Thank you.
package.
With the change in the floater, does that mean we're going to see a savings in some other department?
We will see.
With finance?
Yeah, there is a savings in the first selectmen's, but it's under the professional services line. We had budgeted last year to do an intern program for 2 interns, and with the floater coming into our office, we won't need to do that.
So let me explain a little bit. There was a comment in public, in social media about, we had advertised for another floater. We started out with 1 floater, we went to 2 floaters, and the idea was to rotate these individuals' administrative floaters throughout the different departments as we went, is to float them into the different departments. One did a couple of things. Number one, it made it so that if there was a shortage or a need in one department, like the tax office during tax collection, they would be familiar with the office and trained in that office. And what's happened over time, a lot of the administrative floaters that started with us as administrative floaters have ended up, when people have retired, in the building department, number of other places. They have gravitated to that department and have expressed an interest in that department, and they have already had some training and understanding of that department, so they are able to slide in. The second problem with people being out on maternity leave or FMLA or whatever it may be, a lot of times the department head does not have the time, because they're short, to train. It's easier just to do the work yourself. and that makes it difficult for the department heads to backstop their department. The idea of the floaters was to make it so they have an understanding of the department, they understand what they do. So we actually, one of the floaters worked very well with the tax office and with the assessors, and there is an opening with fiscal. So it's really that person who's gone to fiscal and become, can be used in assessors, the tax office when needed, and in the fiscal department, which has worked really well. So this is actually working out very well, as we've had people out on maternity leave, FMLA, whatever it may be. And the idea is to train them when there is not a shortage of people in the department, rather train them in the departments, the different departments. One of the things that has worked out well was one of the floaters started out as up in land use, became familiar with land use, ended up, when we implemented software, she had an in-depth knowledge of how the whole land use, both on building department and in land use, how they worked together and how it worked, and helped implement the software and the system successfully. Without that, we would probably have not been successful without that knowledge of how everything ties together. And it also makes it so the silos break down, so everybody understands each other's jobs and how it has to flow down, especially how it has to flow down to Dan's office. Everything has to flow down into the finance office to make sure he is properly satisfied for Gatsby on accounting and how everything goes. So the system has worked pretty well, and it has worked well in the tax and assessors office. So just so you know how that's worked out for that system. With this many employees, we always have somewhere we're either missing someone, but a lot of the floaters have become into a permanent role. And they've also shown like that, this is something they never thought they would like. Our floater in the building department she started as a floater and then took over as admin in the building department permanently. And we're currently, one of the floaters is trained in the building department, should that person need to take time off or whatever. It's working well.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd like to add on top of that, with Darcel and Azra in the office, both of them, we've gotten more compliments from residents of how well that office is run and how helpful they both are. Darcel has been incredibly helpful, and as well as Azra, with people coming in, and no one likes to come pay their taxes, but the majority of people that stop Jeff or myself in the hallway, they actually stop and thank us now for the way it's changed down there. So it's been an incredible job, so thank both of you guys.
I have had people come into my office and make mention that how nice it was to come and deal with the people in the tax office and the assessors. And again, I think there's no such thing as it's not my job to deal with the public and help them, and it's really working well. Ann, you have a question?
I do have a question, because as a newbie, I think I'm just a little confused. So if you are using a floater in different departments, you're considering that overtime, but they get paid for 8 hours, don't they?
No,
Straight time.
during tax season, and we make it a point to deposit checks the next day after receipt. And to get that done, sometimes the staff has to work until 6 or 5:30 even, so that's the overtime. In the past, we had an issue where checks weren't being deposited for weeks, sometimes maybe even as far as a month. But since we've made a change down at that office, and Azra and her staff have done an incredible job the next day, much to the point people call me and say, "What are you guys doing?" Like, my check's already cleared the bank. But yeah, that's why.
We have very proud citizens who are not like, but they are very proud that they pay their taxes on time, and they want their checks processed. And they do actually check the website to see if it was. I think Mr. Riley is one of those.
Yeah, I can attest to that fact. About a year or so ago, before we made that change, I would pay my taxes and drop them off in the lockbox. And I would track how long it took from the time I put it in till the time it cleared the bank. And there were times where it did not clear the bank until like 14 or 15 days after I put it in. Lately, if I put it in on a business day, it has already cleared the bank 2 days later. So that is a tremendous increase in town revenue just from getting those funds into the account and I guess into the Chet account, not Chet, but the state's short-term savings account. And that's been a tremendous asset, and I appreciate as a person, as a member who sits here, how that has been fixed, and it has been really beneficial to the bank.
Yeah, not to bore everyone with the details, but all of our funds at the end of the day are swept into the short-term investment fund. So they're earning interest immediately once they hit the bank. So that's why it's imperative to get them in as quickly as possible.
Probably having it, this cost of overtime and getting it done probably is over, the interest rate probably overrides the cost of having the people there to get it done. So we're, it's just more good news. And Azra's doing a great job. Another pleasant employee here.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Azra?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ezra.
Thank you. Economic development. Is that, yeah. Or IT, I'm sorry.
IT.
I'm sorry. Dave? Dave is our IT manager.
So you guys can see our IT budget is flat. It's flat basically because we changed the strategy of how we're going to account for GIS. We have a GIS coordinator, which is in planning, so we moved the GIS budget from the IT budget to planning where it should be. So Jordan will be here tomorrow night. You'll see his budget will go up by the exact amount that Dave's has gone down. The most of the increase in the software support, and it's mostly for cyber. So, Dave, if you want to talk about that without getting too in detail.
Over the last 3 years, one of our goals has been to increase our cybersecurity, as well as move as many of our services that we currently host in-house to a cloud-based, so that we're not running the servers here locally, so that if we have an emergency or if we go down, we can operate from someplace else very easily. That's part of our business continuity plan as well. We've been going over that. We've made a few changes to things we've done based on business continuity, based on the floods, on natural disasters that we've experienced. We did have a second flood over at the fire department that a lot of people aren't aware of, that caused us a little bit of an outage. And we've since learned from that and rerouted things as a result.
I mean, the good news was there was some damage and we went down, but we were back up within it didn't take long
It was
at all.
about 20 minutes that we were fully down, but then we were at reduced capacity for a little while longer.
Which is probably, in his world, reduced capacity, but I don't think there was really any noticeable.
Most people didn't notice.
It was the speed change of what we were doing, so. Any questions for Dave on this?
Just, again, not a question, I don't mean to babble, but what the IT department has done for the town is when we had the recent meeting with our insurance people, our cybersecurity is at a level where we can get coverage that most other towns cannot get. And to me, what we save there in potential cyber losses and actual premiums saved with that level is really a credit to the folks who are doing all of this.
I think that it was mentioned before in another meeting that the National Guard came out and did a cybersecurity audit for us. They're doing every town and school district in the state. They've been doing it since 2022. We participated in the 2022, and since the 2022, we are at the highest level that we can be for our cybersecurity in their audit. So far this year, we are their top person. So we're the top town for cybersecurity.
And that goes hand in hand with the amount of technology we're implementing, that it has to, there's a lot to do with cybersecurity as we implement that to make sure it still meets our cybersecurity needs.
Or do we do any testing with staff to see if they
Yes.
open?
Testing is done anywhere from weekly to monthly. I don't have a set schedule that I do it, because if I set a schedule, everyone would know that we're doing it.
Very good.
I don't even know when he's,
So, and we changed it around. In the very beginning, we were sending out the same exact test to everybody. But I found from other towns that that's not so hot, because someone gets it in the department, and then they warn everybody else that there's a test going on and it doesn't work. So we've now switched it up so everybody gets a random one from a list of like maybe 20 different types of
Very
tests.
good. Do we have multifactorial?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we've been using multi-factor. Actually, this year, that expires, but we've had it for 3 years now.
Jason, you had a question?
I'm currently watching a show on Netflix about a cyber attack, and it's terrifying. So every one of these dollars is well spent. Again, another new guy question. If you could just give me the 30-second elevator pitch on, if I pick two of the big drivers of the cost, the Egress Defend. What does that do for us?
I can tell you, basically, that goes in hand with our testing. It's from the same company that does that we implement the testing for. And what it does is it watches everybody's mailboxes. It checks to see if there's anything suspicious. It uses artificial intelligence to look for trends. But as part of the test, if you fail the test, it talks to that program as well and says, hey, this person keeps on failing the test. Let's pay attention more to that mailbox and give it a little bit more scrutiny than the others.
Based on the
Based on their
probability or
test
likelihood
scores.
they may have let
Yes.
something in. Okay. In the QDS cloud hosting.
QDS, that'll be the second to last that we move over to cloud. QDS does the tax and assessor. It's just their regular day-to-day program. So that would be moved off of a server that we're hosting here locally. So that would eliminate our backups, a number of things, because it would all be hosted in the cloud.
Okay, so it cleans up some redundancy and gets the physical server off our.
Yes.
Yeah, Jason, one of our finance goals is to get all of our finance pieces in the cloud. Just in case, something happened to this building, everyone that's under the finance umbrella can work, and we can set up shop really anywhere. And still, create assessment, send out tax bills, and finance, we can pay the bills and do what we have to do.
Makes sense. Thank you.
and as far-fetched as that may seem to some municipalities, having been through the tornado, COVID, and the flood, I would just say that you need to be prepared for everything, because if you're not, you're going to be in trouble. So-
If we hadn't moved the library to the cloud before everything happened, it's been in the cloud for a while, the library would not have been able to come back up. We wouldn't have been able to do phones, because even our phones are cloud-based now. And all their phones, we just picked up their phones, moved them on over, gave them a connection, and they're back to work.
Yeah, this is the things that, the public doesn't see, the boards don't always see or understand the progress that's been made. It seems seamless, it seems relatively painless. But again, we've been working hard to get everything into the cloud as much as possible. And I don't think it's going to reduce anything, having to buy servers, because you pay for it on the other end. But the cloud makes it so that you have a tremendous amount of backup and power without having to pay for that. So it's working out pretty well. Any other questions of Dave? Thank you, Dave. Economic development.
It's dry. Maybe not. Good evening.
So EDC is down. Our second budget tonight, that is actually down, and Kevin can talk about that, but I think it mostly, that has to do with the Arts Subcommittee going out on their own, correct?
Yeah, that's part of it, and of course, you know, the stewardship of Ann Armino, our outgoing chair of the EDC, who, you know, runs a tight fiscal ship, let's say. That's right. I know, she's watching me. But yes, the Arts and Culture Subcommittee, which was formed in the halfway through 2022, and has, as you see, historically had a line item of 5,000, is now, well, two things. One, it was reduced going into this budget before we knew that they were actually going to dissolve, and they've now formed or in the process of forming a 501c3, the Arts and Culture, Southbury Arts and Culture Alliance. So with that, I mean, it's possible that this line item will go away entirely, although I would love to see it, since they are going to become a nonprofit, I would love to see at least the charter minimum of the 500 perhaps to give them as a nonprofit that we're allowed to, our maximum that we're allowed to give to nonprofits is 500 annually. So I would love to see us continue to be able to do that, but.
Any questions for Kevin on his budget? John?
I do, couple of observations. First of all, Kevin, when you first came here, we asked you and the department to develop goals and what is reasonably achievable and what would be success. Board of Finance has never received any metrics by which we could measure. Can you comment on that, please?
Well, I would say a couple things. That one of the metrics by which I think to measure it would be the aspect of this role in our EDC to be the liaison to the business community. That's kind of that's a difficult measurement to make. I mean, we could do a survey out to the business community on their satisfaction, let's say, with the town with regards to business friendliness, for example. That might be a way to gauge some of that. I know that one of the things that came up, John, when you mentioned that in the beginning was grand list growth. I certainly would be willing to address that in that what I think a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, if you have a plaza, let's for example, like Southbury Plaza or Southbury Green, and it's half full, and then it's versus full, your real estate taxes are consistent, the same. It's difficult to measure that aspect of grand list growth based on just whether a plaza is full or empty. Okay, and we are have a low percentage of vacancy, lower than the average. That said, to significantly make the dent in the grand list growth, you know, as a measurement tool, is going to require additional property that can be developed commercially and industrially, or property that we currently have, such as, say, Volpe Rosen coming online as a developed property. I think, you know, in this immediate moment, immediate's probably too strong of a word because it's probably going to take a while, but the focus right now, the metric, so to speak, that I'm gauging myself by is how quickly and efficiently we can redevelop, let's say, the IBM property, and both, you know, with the outgoing facility and that land, that has become sort of top of the list. But there is a variety of factors, I think, that could be, metrics that could be used to measure the effectiveness of the department and the commission.
Have we ever marketed
We
the
would
Volpe
certainly
Rosen
look-
property, Kevin?
I'm sorry, say it
Have
again?
we ever marketed the Volpe Rosen property? I know we were talking about it a couple of years ago. I don't know if we've ever done anything about it.
It's been marketed in that those that have expressed interest in it, that have come forward, to take a look at it, I've given them materials by which to evaluate it and consider it, but not in terms of, like you're saying, truly putting it out on the market as a piece of property.
Certainly a history of, 5 years, how long you been here, Kevin? About 5 years?
5 years.
It would be certainly interesting to see the history of the retail vacancy rates. I know that was one thing that was talked about.
Yep.
And also the growth in the grand list. We have, motor vehicles, personal property, commercial, and real estate, 4 components or something like that.
Yes.
Be interesting to see what the growth has been in those over the last 5 years. There are metrics that can be developed and researched.
Yeah, absolutely. And I take a close look at those, John, so I'd be happy to share them.
If I may.
Casey was,
Casey? In Kevin's defense, as the previous chair, we did have discussions at most of our meetings that going forward, we were going to come up with a plan in the next year or so of our goals and our, I don't want to say strategic plan. but-
Economic development strategic plan.
But where we were, where we're going, and so that was in the works as the chair and as you as the director. But I've left now, so it's all up to you and Jack to
We'll pick up the
carry
ball,
that on.
yeah.
But the plan is going to be on paper and in a report. So we're working on that. Well, I'm not working on it anymore, but Kevin is. 5 years? No, we needed 5 years to work on it.
Well, we haven't been working on it for 5 years.
I don't think it's fair to count 2020.
Yeah.
Casey, do you have something?
I just had a quick question. What's the difference between promotional advertising and social media?
The social media is merely just boosting posts.
Okay.
So that specific line item is purely earmarked for boosting in an Instagram or a Facebook post.
But promotional and advertising sounds like the same thing.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how they're being used. So
Okay.
straight up advertising is if we're putting something in the newspaper, if we're working, for example, Hearst Media is now taking over the Republican American, that's growing and growing and growing. So putting together a media advertising package with them or putting an ad in the Voices, for example, on a monthly basis, that would be that would be advertising. Where promotional could be a couple things. It could be creating a promotional video that promotes the town. It could be promotional in something like Dan just mentioned. If we were to decide to use those resources to take a particular piece of property and that we own, like Volpe Rosen, or we could even consider doing it for a property like IBM, and so you could use it to promote the town, but it's more sales. You're selling something. So advertising versus promotional. Promotional,
I see.
Promoting the town. Advertising is more traditional advertising.
Where's the town being promoted?
Well,
Where would I find that?
These line items are in there at our tools at discretion. Each year they can be used for different things. For example, if I'm putting an ad in,
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. I'm not trying to
That's all
nitpick
right.
it at
No,
all. I'm just trying to
like, for
understand
example,
where
like,
these
so every
items
year we
go.
do the Connecticut Magazine, so we put an ad in there.
Okay.
Advertising in town. Every year we put in, the town guide, we'll put an ad in there. So there's certain consistent, places that it'll appear, that it is there every year. But to Dan's point, like, if we want to do something in a broader sweep, something that's of a larger, one of the reasons why all the dollars consistently haven't been spent every year is because they're there for large ticket, potentially, items, and we just haven't pulled the trigger and used it,
Got it.
essentially.
Thank you.
Kevin, has anyone reached out to us or reached out to you inquiring about the IBM property?
Yeah, we're in talks with the earmarked, or the person, the company that has been charged with marketing it. They haven't put it on the market yet, but they have reached out to us, and we've had a couple of meetings, preliminary meetings to discuss it with them. You know, what they're thinking, what IBM's thinking, what we're thinking, you know, how to proceed. And, you know, right now, it's at that sort of preliminary, you know, they just got the task, essentially. So,
Anybody else for Kevin? Thank you, Kevin.
all right, thank you.
Dan, you're up next, I think.
Do I go over there, or can I stay
Go
here?
to the hot seat, Dave.
All right, I'm already.
I just got it.
Is Sam gonna join us? Sam would like to join us? He needs somebody qualified to answer a question.
That is true.
This mic doesn't work well, Sam, so let's just make sure you know that when you speak up. Now, let's share this.
So as you guys can see, the finance department budget is increased, I think, 6.2%. The majority of that is moving the floater into the finance office. What we did, we had a part-time person for about a year. She actually left the town. Her husband got a better job, and she was going to stay home with the children. So the job was open, and we decided in talking to the tax office and the assessor's office that it would be beneficial for us to have someone that can float between all the offices. So there's certain times of the year where the assessor is incredibly busy. She could use the help of the tax department. And as we're starting now, building the budget and starting to get, believe it or not, in the middle of May, we'll start our audit. We're going to need some help with pulling stuff and things like that. So that's where the majority of this growth is. And we've taken like I said, the intern program, we've kind of eliminated that. So that enabled us to put the funds in here to bring the person into our office full-time.
And I think to the point that the nice thing about this is we have discovered or found someone who was showing a gravitation towards this type of work. It's almost like vetting a person before you're putting them on. And I think there was some reluctancy early on from Dan to fill the position based on trying to get the right person. But I think I think we're doing very well with the person who's in there.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're looking for, especially under the finance umbrella, is the culture fit as well, and someone that could come into the office and, you know, and I think we found that person.
So is this a headcount addition, or is this
No,
a transfer?
It's
A partial
good question. It's a partial transfer.
And it shows up in a couple of other places, like the tax office budget.
We're taking the brunt of it in our office, but the overtime, when there's overtime, will be in the tax office.
So
Just
where-
as from a payroll standpoint, it's easier to keep the person in one office. And since assessor and tax kind of falls under finance, we're just going to take the position in our office.
So if it's a transfer, then there ought to be a reduction someplace else.
There is. In the selectmen's budget, under professional services, there's a reduction, I think, of about $26,000. So the difference between the two is about $200 or $2,500.
This is not only about the cost, the cost, but it also, the positive,
It's actually,
more.
I don't know which, Betsy, the professional services is under, it's either the committee or, I can't remember.
What this does do is what it does do is it creates efficiencies and better operation of the, I actually moved, one of the things I have done is move the assessors and the tax office, they report to Dan, not to me right now. It just makes more sense for everybody on that has anything to do with financial and assessors is with Dan. I mean, I have information from Dan. It's just easier to coordinate and operate that way. So everything that has to do with finance is under finance now.
Yeah. if
So
you
that's
look-
the offset
That's the
there.
offset right there, yeah, the $28,000 down.
And the other expenses is in the first selectman's budget, it falls under the
It
consolidation.
falls
of
under the
first selectman?
consolidation of the First Selectmen's budget,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Yes, Ann?
So I understand the overtime in the tax office because things have to be processed. But how is there overtime in the treasurer's office?
Similar with us, Ann, as we go through our audit, or even the budget time, we're gonna need some extra time. It's to prepare this, because out of my staff, the majority is non-exempt employees. So anything over 35 hours is overtime.
Really?
Yeah,
Are they all in the union?
no.
They're not in the union.
We're not a union
it's
town hall,
straight-
but
It's straight
35
time.
to 40 is straight
Oh, so over
time, but it's
35 hours
considered
is
overtime.
overtime.
And then 40 and
I
above
see.
is time and a half.
Okay.
Yep.
Just one observation. You know, when I moved to Southbury, one of the things, when I was put on the Board of Finance, we began to look at, and I judge the finance office not on a year-to-year basis, but what has happened over a period of time. When I came here and when Dan came in, town had no professional pension management. Its pension coverage was in the low 70s or the high 60s as far as how much we had put away in reserves. In Dan's tenure, we brought in professional pension management. Initially, the town actually had a registered representative who was making a commission on everything that the town bought. Dan brought in a professional manager that operates as a consultant and gets paid a fee. When I look at the towns, and, you know, I'm a professional investment and, you know, financial manager. When I look at this, I say, what has happened under the tenure to the town's reputation? And I will just say this, we have gone from an A-rated credit to now a triple A-rated credit, which few towns in this state our size can get. You do not get that type of a credit rating, and you do not get that humongous increase in your pension obligation coverage. We're now, what, Dan, over 90%, right? Without a continuing program. So what I just say is when we look at the financial side, don't look at just a one-year budget. Look at what has happened to the town's reputation, to all of our numbers, and how those outside the town look at us.
Yeah, that's what I would say, John. For us, from the finance department, we set our goals early. You know, if anyone looks at our audit, we have an $80 million budget or $77 million budget. For the last 5 years, we've had 0 audit entries, none. So when we set out at the beginning of the year, we set our goals, and that's one of them. We're going to have a clean audit with 0 audit adjusting entries. And, you know, as difficult as it was, and it really wasn't, it was the help of Sam and Darcel and Azra and everyone, all of our department heads. To get to AAA, when I first started, they said it was unheard of. It would never happen for a town of our size. And we just kept at it and just doing everything the right way. It's the staff more than anything. That's how we got there.
But when you look, and I look from the standpoint of internal controls and how much control we have, when you look and you look to the auditor, When I came here, this town had a local audit firm. We now have a nationally recognized audit firm that is considered among the best in the country. And when this town can come through the last 4 or 5 annual audits, okay, with no exceptions, and also thanks to the leadership of John Michaels, this is one of the few towns that has implemented its own separate internal audit system and approach, that we not only look down at the big picture, but we have an internal audit process that is run by the same national company that does our financial audit, that in essence looks at all of the internal controls and everything like that. And on that, we come out very well. So that's really a feather in John Michael's hat to bring that in, and in Dan's hat. And I just want to say that, you know, I appreciate it, and most folks don't understand what happens on that side of the business. And that is one of the things that makes this town's operations stand apart.
I'll just tell everyone one funny story. When I first started here, I came from the private sector, and I went to a Board of Finance meeting, and I said, maybe I should meet with John and take him to lunch to find out how things run here. So I said, John, let's go to lunch. I'll take you to the marketplace up in Woodbury. And John called me back. He said, no, I'm going to pay for lunch, and we're going to go to Friendly's. And that's how I realized how Southbury actually runs. So that was my first experience in Southbury, and it taught me something of how it works here, and we do it right. And that's, you know.
Jason, do you have something?
I do. I'm not going to top the Friendly story, but I did have a question. Similar to the question I had for Darcel in the OpEx line. Right now, it seems like you're tracking to be under budget by, we'll call it $5,000 for round numbers. But you're going to ask for a $3,000 increase over the current year's adopted budget. Can you walk me through the why there?
Yeah, the biggest thing is in the payroll processing fees. They're going to go up year over year. And also, we're going to start attending, now that we're out of COVID and we're kind of gotten the bulk of most of the cleanup behind us, we're going to start attending more GFOA seminars, and I'm going to have the staff go to more training for GASB and GFOA.
Okay,
So that's the bulk of it.
So similar to the assessor's office, there were things that you guys could have done this year, just didn't happen. But it's in the game plan for next fiscal.
Yep, and with the storm, with FEMA, it's kind of all hands on deck, and have to thank Betsy for that also, because she's doing an amazing heavy lifting of the majority of the application.
So no junkets this year.
You know.
So something, when we talk about head count and cost and overtime and where it is, just a reminder to the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen historically, one of the other things that have happened when you talk about head count, we used to have, how many, 1, 2, 3 people, 4 people? When you first came here, how many people? In finance, in that?
There were 4.
There was 4. And our HR was outsourced, and it was a mess. It wasn't working, and one of the things the Board of Finance had said was they would really like to see a functioning HR department. So now our head count is the same, but now we have a fully functioning HR professional, also in finance, dealing with the day-to-day operation. When you have anybody who has this many employees knows that in any given day, out of over 100 employees, somewhere there's a problem, personal problem at work, whatever it may be. It's just the nature of the business, and we care about our employees. So we have a fully functioning HR department, and that was no small task to get that to develop into that situation. So the efficiencies are there. How well it is running is shown in many different aspects. But just please remember that you have a fully functioning HR department now that does a lot of the work that was left up to, frankly, up to me to, that you had to deal with and in the hiring process, there's hiring that goes on. There's a lot of work that goes into that before the candidates are brought, the final candidates are brought to me for an interview and brought to the Board of Selectmen. So you're getting more for your money than you had before. And I would say that the professional level of these people is pretty good, how they function. So we always have to keep that in the back of our mind. I know sometimes it looks simple, and it looks like, oh, yeah, that's right. But remember back, we had no HR, real good HR. I think we're not our labor attorney doesn't get a call anywhere near what he used to.
Yeah, no, it's, our labor attorney fee line is half, if not, a little more than half of what it used to be.
Any other questions for Dan?
Jack?
No.
Wow.
Most of your increase was that one line item.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is, it tells a story, and unfortunately, I don't know if it gets to the public. I don't know if they understand, how the sausage is made is, they don't really care, except they're eating good sausage, and is the ship on a good course? And, we had a very good, the ship, Salisbury was always on a very good course, but I would say that with all that's gone on, I think the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen recognize how well it is running and efficiently that it is running.
One thing, just to get to Jeff's point, one thing in the Board of Finance budget, if anyone has had a chance to look at all the budgets, we did input a line for someone to come in and do an evaluation of every department next year to see what the needs are. And that's just kind of, we should do that every couple of years anyway, just to see where we are in our departments and what are the needs, and do we need to add or decrease, or is everything good, and what can we do to improve how things are running in Town Hall. So that's in for next year, and something that we'll be looking at.
Any other questions for Dan? Finance?
We have it in for $25,000. And it will be a complete, every department, what the needs are. No, it will be a good thing.
Okay, well, we don't want, we have such a good chi going on now, we don't want the valuation to come in and everyone freezes up and then we have a problem, so.
I don't think.
Absolutely. And one thing we do want to, one thing that I think of this, Ann, is, I mean, I look at myself even, I'm on the down slope of my career right now, and maybe 2 years, so how do we develop the next person to come in and take? And luckily, I have people in my office that can do that, and hopefully this person can help us with that,
Yeah, I don't think I would say it's, hopefully, I mean, I think the employees, it's not a matter of, there's always room for work. It's just where is it distributed and what is the need? So it's not necessarily what people envision of corporate wanting to, the purpose is to cut. I don't think that's the case here, but if we don't know on a professional level, we can't make good decisions. So we want to make good decisions. Anybody else? All's quiet. Who's next?
We're done for the night, Jeff. Thank you, everyone. This was,
We're adjourned.
I think, I think the format this year is working out well, because everyone is getting to see our department head.